Hi, everyone. I am Taylor. I am the Wellness Advisor here at the Lanby. And for today's Lanby Community Group session, we are going to be talking about all things metabolic health. As you know, this is one of my favorite topics because it is so universally relevant, but it is often a question I get of what the heck does metabolic health even mean? So I wanted to use today's group session to kind of deep dive into what it means, things we can pull levers on to optimize our metabolic health, and also self-assess to see if we're in a good standing with our metabolic health and what lab values correlate with that as well. So the $1,000,000 question, what is metabolic health? There are many different definitions for this, but the kind of overarching definition that I like to use is it's our body's ability to use nutrients efficiently for fuel, growth, and repair and energy storage. It's the sum of our cardiovascular, mitochondrial, liver, gut, and hormone function. So it's kind of the sum of all parts as it relates to how we optimally function. Poor diet and lifestyle impacts all of these systems for the worse. So again, metabolic health, look at it as your report card of how everything is operating. Like I mentioned in the beginning, this is an important topic for truly everyone. Poor metabolic health increases your risk for type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's disease, fatty liver, gallstones, PCOS, sleep apnea. The list really goes on. This contributes to other issues such as infertility, fatigue, chronic pain, anxiety, other things listed here as it relates to mood. So again, it's the upstream solution by optimizing your metabolic health for these chronic conditions or kind of more symptomatic things that people can experience. Again, it's relevant for everyone as 50% of Americans have imbalances in blood sugar. I feel like that comes as no surprise when you look at the standard American diet. Carbohydrates, specifically simple carbohydrates, are the most predominantly consumed nutrient in American diets, meaning blood sugar imbalances and end results of metabolic dysfunction. Another staggering statistic is that 35% of Americans have prediabetes, meaning that they are on the cusp of developing type 2 diabetes with markers like A1C and glucose out of range. And 84% of these people don't even know they have it. This is kind of a self-nod to the Lanby of how oftentimes people get labs that aren't thoroughly reviewed to kind of get this marker where it's like, okay, you're on the cusp of developing a chronic disease and what interventions can you do because of it? It's a nice intervention point, but again, we don't even want people reaching to that prediabetes zone. Overall, 12% of Americans are metabolically healthy, meaning 88% of us, 1 in 9, are walking around with some form of metabolic dysfunction, which I'll get into what that means. This is defined as having optimal levels of the following 5 factors: blood glucose levels, triglycerides, HDL lipoprotein, so it's in your lipid panel, optimal blood pressure, waist circumference, and without the need for medication. So self-assessing for metabolic health. Like I mentioned, there's criteria if you are diagnosed with metabolic syndrome that correlate with those factors that achieve optimal metabolic health. So the parameters that are above are differentiated by gender. So waist circumference, blood pressure, the lab panels, all are relevant for assessing your own. We at the Lanby do kind of expanded labs as they relate to metabolic health that I noted here too, that classic reference ranges when you get a lab drawn, if they're not thoroughly reviewed, you are being assessed based on the 2nd to 95th percentile of Americans, which means it encompasses all disease states. It's kind of the average, not the optimal. So our optimal target ranges are listed out here for all of these panels that you can look at your lab work and see, am I in these optimal ranges as it relates to my ALT, which is a liver enzyme, my fasting glucose, my fasting insulin, which is kind of glucose's best friend hormone that gets it where it needs to be. Hemoglobin A1C is the 3-month marker of blood glucose levels. Uric acid, which is a fructose and alcohol metabolism marker. Your triglycerides, a marker of simple carbohydrate intake. And also one of my favorite tools is looking at continuous glucose monitoring data. It's a wearable device, which you wear on the back of your arm or your stomach that looks at 24 hours worth of data on your glucose levels. It is a really empowering tool to see in real-time feedback of lifestyle factors like exercise, sleep quality, stress, and also dietary factors like blood sugar response in terms of your average diet or specific foods. So the more you know, you can empower yourself to make changes that relate to optimal glucose levels. So diving into the factors that contribute to metabolic health. Diet This goes to no surprise. What you eat really impacts these levels. Exercise, how much movement you get in a day or in a week, your sleep quality, and stress management. So starting with diet, I think it's nice to zoom out and look at what constitutes a macronutrient. And this is not something we're ever taught, so I like to highlight it for anyone who might not know that there are 3 essential macronutrients: protein, fats, and carbs. And to double click on the carbs category, not all carbs are created equal. So if you look at what falls into the category of carbs, people think of breads, pastas, kind of simple carbohydrates, but vegetables, fruits, legumes, they also fall into the carb category. What delineates the two is the amount of fiber and starch in each. So when we're thinking about blood sugar balancing, we can still consume carbohydrates because of this fiber and protective benefit of the kind of complex carb category, whereas there's less benefit, less nutrients in the simple carbohydrates. But how do we balance all 3 of these to create a better response? And data point that I find to be fascinating is that the average American consumes about 55 pounds of added sugar each year, which falls into that carb category. So if you are not balancing with enough protein or fats or monitoring how much added sugar is in your day-to-day diet, you're on kind of the road for metabolic dysfunction. So we come from a mindset of food is medicine. I love the quote by Ocean Robbins: when you eat the standard American diet, you get the standard American diseases. It's no, unknown topic that heart disease, diabetes, other cardiovascular issues are all a result of kind of poor lifestyle and dietary habits in this country. So here are some quick tools to use food as medicine to either never get into that zone or kind of reverse disease, because truly what you do 3 times a day for most people is consume meals, and they can either move you in the positive direction or the negative. So building a plate with at least 50 to 75% of those non-starchy vegetables. So think of your average dinner plate. You want to fill that up with a gorgeous amount of green leafy vegetables, a bell pepper, asparagus. Just get creative with what is on your plate. The more colors, the better. Include healthy fats at every meal. I think we're all undoing the kind of ideology of the early 2000s, late 90s, that low fat is the way to go. Completely untrue. Healthy fats help satiate us, so creating a more fullness to a meal. They help with our mood, our brain health, inflammation. So things like avocado, olive oil, nuts, seeds, fatty fish are all so important in a balanced plate. Optimizing protein intake. This is a very trendy topic where everyone's trying to get enough protein in a day, but I just wanted to highlight its importance. Typically, having a protein at each meal not only helps with satiety, but it also helps with hormone regulation, blood sugar balancing. It makes us allows muscle growth. There's so much benefit to getting enough protein in a meal. Typically for people, anywhere between 20 to 25 grams is optimal. Needs definitely vary by individual. Low glycemic diet means that this is a low sugar or low blood glucose increasing diet. You hear this related a lot of the times to fruit. So you think of different variability as it relates to fruit intake. Berries, apples, things like that are going to be on the lower glycemic end. Tropical fruits like pineapple or nectarines or oranges are more on the high glycemic end. So you, again, don't want to demonize any food, but being strategic that, okay, if I'm having something that has a little bit more readily available carbohydrate, let me add in a fat, let me add in a protein to blunt the blood sugar spike. You also want to cut out or reduce ultra processed foods. This could be a Lanby community session in and of itself. Ultra processed foods are really non-nutritive. They have little to no nutrition value to them. They're rarely satiating and they're highly addictive. I'm not demonizing any food. Trust me, there are times where Doritos sound like the best thing in the world and I will eat them, but just being mindful of the fact that they're not going to fill you up despite having a lot of energy and a lot of calories in them. So how to balance those out, making them a part of your diet. So in a mindful, abundant way, but not in a demonizing them where if you eat it, you feel bad. Just know they are scientifically processed to make us want them more. So you are at no fault for saying the true Lay's slogan of you can literally not just have one of those chips. They are designed that way. My favorite tip is cooking more meals at home. I think this is the one behavior that will truly optimize your health under all facets. If you have GI issues, metabolic issues, heart health issues, sleep disorders, cooking your meals at home, even if they're not the most healthy meals is a step in the right direction. It empowers you to know what is going into a meal. Oftentimes, they're more filling as it relates to satiety. You also can avoid some of the ingredients that might not work with you. Inflammatory oils, simple carbohydrates. It's a lot of sneaky sugar in most products. So this is one way that you get comfortable in the kitchen and you can be super proud about what meals you make. They do not need to be Instagram picture perfect either. So whatever you make is a good step in the right direction. Obvious one, shopping the perimeter of the grocery store and planning meals instead of grazing throughout the day. So kind of, again, just planning your meals as it relates to getting groceries in the house and what that looks like in your day-to-day. The other nutrient I want to highlight is within that carbohydrate category, fiber. Fiber is so important. Again, it comes from more than just vegetables. It comes from fruit, legumes, nuts, seeds. You can take a fiber supplement. This elongates our blood sugar curve, meaning if we eat something, we are going to have stabilized blood sugar for longer periods of time. And we actually have blood sugar control, meaning less variability in our hunger cues. So we're going to feel full for longer. We're not going to have a blood sugar crash. We're going to stay nice and stable. Also, there is emerging research on how fiber interacts with our gut microbiome to actually make us feel more satiated, interact with bacteria that balance blood sugar in and of itself, which is so fascinating. A lot of people have heard of the bacteria Akkermansia. This is the direct bacteria in our gut that helps with blood sugar regulation, which is so interesting. Fiber improves cholesterol levels. So if you have lipid impairments, fiber is one of those interventions that you can include. And it helps with healthy bowel movements. And bowel movements are a direct report card of how your gut health is and your overall health. We should be having at least one form of bowel movement every single day. General recommendation is about 35 grams of fiber per day. If you are not eating even remotely close to that, you want to go slow and low. Too much fiber all at once is going to backfire and make you more into the constipated range of things. So increase slowly over time. Think about, can I sprinkle on some chia seeds to the avocado toast I have in the morning? Can I add one more vegetable to my lunch? Can I sprinkle in some sprouts into the wrap that I'm having for dinner? Just get creative with it to move the needle in the right direction. And of course, hydrate as you increase fiber. Movement is one of the other big factors of metabolic health. 75% of glucose is converted into glycogen, which ends up in our skeletal muscle. I always say muscle is your get out of jail free card. It absorbs excess glucose. It also helps with longevity, metabolic health, so many benefits, bone health. So the more muscle, the better. And you kind of allow yourself to have more glycemic resilience because it's a glucose deposit site. Guidelines, about 150 minutes of moderate to intense activity per day. Incorporating some form of resistance training, again, a nod to the direction of lean muscle mass. But again, it doesn't need to be sweaty. It doesn't need to be fatiguing. Just getting movement in a day is where I really like people to start. We are kind of in a sedentary workspace where most people from 9 to 5 are at a desk. We really need to have intermittent movement throughout the day. Taking the stairs, going on a walk at lunch, just getting off one subway stop earlier. Around 10,000 steps is optimal, but we know the threshold of where disease risk increases is below 5,000 steps. So if you have a wearable, check in, see how many steps you average per day. You also just want to find joy in movement. So it's something that you want to be enticed to go back to because movement helps across the board, not even just metabolic health. Helps with your sleep, your cardiovascular, your mood. Endorphins are very real. So find something that you like doing and do it often. Sleep is one of the biggest factors as well for metabolic health. Getting less than 7 hours a night dysregulates your blood sugar levels. I've seen it with my patients who do CGMs. If they have a really gnarly night of sleep, their fasted glucose in the morning is significantly higher, which just goes to show how profoundly impactful sleep is for overall metabolic health. So I hit the high notes of all of those facets. Hopefully you feel empowered to take this knowledge, maybe pause on some of those slides, see what lever you can pull to optimize your metabolic health, whether it's increasing a new food in your routine, getting a little bit better of a sleep routine, moving beyond 5,000 steps. I want to empower you that a little goes a long way, and just being informed of what your report card is for metabolic health makes all the difference. So reach out to the Lanby team so we can kind of assist you in that way. Thank you for tuning in.